at least before we get started. And then I can start.
Yeah. So Mr. Shankar, we'll take 5 to 7 minutes in just introducing about the program and with the opening remarks by a principal followed by your session. That's
okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great.
Can we start?
Yes.
Yeah. Nandika, you can start.
Good evening to each and every one of you present here. The ESAL and Scale Hub of Jai Hind College is privileged to welcome you all back to our second webinar for Innovate 2021 in association with Make in India and Maharashtra State Innovation Society. I'd now like to invite our principal, Dr. Ashok Wadia, to say a few words.
Thank you very much. I will keep it really few because our speaker is so eager to tell us about, like how to make from 0 to 1 or maybe to 1 million or billion, and he just is, when you consider the full of energy and the knowledge and he wants to impart that, I think I'm coming in a way. It's like a stopper. I've been put over there, bottle and just coming out. So great, Shankar, to have you here, Mr. Shankar Srinivasan. You will not find better audience than these guys, and not just because they are from Jai Hind, but there are many others from other colleges, institutes. What is important over here is that all of them are very enthusiastic about learning, and problems are always there. But who looks at the problem in a different way and think about that there are always solutions, will be able to survive, and not only that, will be winner. So I think you are the right person to tell us, and the product making market fit, because the product, unless you'll find that you give it a shape and make it attractive, the market will not look at it, however good it is. So I think the right perception, particularly for the startup, to understand that when they are going into this kind of adventure, it is very important that it is not just like you have a startup and you can brag about it, but you have to also look at the various nuances. So I must congratulate my students, for like every time they get the right people, right person under the guidance of Rakhi ma'am, and even Pratik sir is here. So I'm sure that today's session will be wonderful. And now I will stop talking so Shankar can actually tell, and guide the students in the right way. Thank you, Shankar, for being here on virtual platform.
Thank you, sir, so much. You've, of course, been the principal back when I was studying at Jai Hind as well. But I just want to, before I start, I just want to introduce, I think you can stop sharing your screen, Nandika. Yeah, thanks. So I just want to introduce myself. So all the students who are with the cameras on.
Good evening, sir. If I could please interrupt for a moment and give us the privilege to introduce you, because we have you on board. So would you mind if we introduce you? Thank you so much, sir. So I welcome our audience again to our second session, which has a very, very catchy title, 0 to 1, Achieving Problem Solution Fit and Product Market Fit. All of us might know a great idea can bite the dust when poorly executed, while a not so good idea can succeed when implemented correctly. That is exactly what our speaker for the day, Mr. Shankar Srinivasan, is going to talk about. How to execute an idea and then scale. I won't give out everything while I'm talking and leave the session to our speaker. But before that, I would request Professor Pratik Kumar to introduce our amazing speaker for the day.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Hi. So it's my pleasure to welcome our new speaker for the day, Mr. Shankar Srinivasan. Shankar is the head product at Sarva, India's largest digital yoga and meditation platform. Shankar was also the co-founder of Inclove. I hope I got the pronunciation correct. Inclove is the world's first matchmaking platform for people with disabilities. He's also a United Nations awardee, and his work has been carried by national and international publication and media houses such as BBC Worldwide, Guardian UK, Forbes, Business Today, Mint, The Times of India, and The Economic Times. As he mentioned also, he also happens to be an alumnus of Jai Hind College, and he graduated in the year 2013. The stage is yours, Shankar.
Okay.
I know,
Seems like
Shankar, you are just eager to talk. Sorry to interrupt, but like say, just few days back was a day of like disability, that is to acknowledge
3rd December. Yeah.
3rd December, and to give them opportunity, equal opportunity, So, if you can send your note on as a, alumnus of the Jai Hind College to Rakhi ma'am, about the work which you're carrying out, because I know today students don't want to listen to that part. But if you can just tell along with your photo, just email her about the, the work and how this has helped and how it has improved the society or the changes which have been brought about related to that. I will be very glad, because I want to really put it up, like say what our students do for the, for the social, not social media, but rather also for the social cause. So thank you for doing such wonderful things. I'm really proud of you. Thank you, Shankar.
Thank you. Sure, I'll send across. I mean, if Rakhi ma'am can just tell me what exactly is needed, I can send across.
I'll drop in an email to you right away after the session.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Will do. Okay. So when I was contacted actually by you guys, I was told to like talk for about 60 to 90 minutes, and I outright rejected. I said, let's keep it short, and I would love for this to be a little bit more interactive, because there's only so much that I can tell of my own. I need to know what you guys want to know from my experience, and I'm happy to share. So I'll try to keep this short. Just to give you an introduction, of course, beyond what these guys have already so kindly have already said. I'm born, brought up in Bombay all my life. I'm a Mumbai boy, and studied in Bombay, graduated at Jai Hind College. After which I had like a 2-year period where I was working in, well, now it's called EdTech, but back then there was no word called EdTech or education technology as it's now known. And we were trying to take CA education countrywide. So that's what I did for 2 years. It was great. It was like it wasn't founded by me, but it was like a small team of 4 people who were doing this, and we did it for 2 years. And we got acquired by one of the biggest education companies in the world, education/publication companies in the world. If you guys have heard of Pearson, so we got acquired. Kind of became boring for me personally. I had to do something else. That's when Inclove happened. Inclove actually comes from the 2 words inclusive love, and the idea was that we create a platform where anybody, irrespective of their disability, can actually find love through friends, through either for friendship or marriage or companionship or whatever. So we did that for about close to 5 years. For many reasons, we had to wind up. We wound up, and then I took a break. Just needed some kind of reflection. So I lived in a yoga center for a year back in 2019, and came out. Really, that's when I got introduced to yoga, and I came out and I wanted to be directly or indirectly bring yoga into people's lives. And that's when Sarva happened. I joined these guys when they were having 90 studios across India, physical studios. and they wanted to, because of COVID and everything, they wanted to transition to a fully digital platform. And back when I joined, like they were just kind of figuring out how to do it. In the last 15, 16 months now, it's fully today transitioned to a digital platform. We have 6 different offerings. We have celebrities like Malaika, Aurora, and Shahid Kapoor and Shikhar Dhawan, all these guys on the platform. And it's really big. It's now the biggest platform for yoga and meditation digitally in India. And very soon it's going to go global because we have people like Jennifer Lopez on our as investors. So that's where I'm at right now. And this introduction was only so that you understand where some of this perspective comes from that I'm going to talk about. I have like a small presentation of sorts that can just assist with what I'm going to talk about, just so you have something visually to look at. Somebody just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to keep this short, and I would love to hear from you guys. Ask me questions. That's where like that's what I love. I would rather than just going on and on about this. So it's called 0 to 1. The whole idea is that I talk about some of the things that that I have learned just through experience of how to take from an idea into what we call in the startup jargon as MVP, which is called like a minimum viable product. It's only between this that I'm going to talk about, because you can imagine each of these aspects, of course, can go on for hours, but I'm only going to focus on this because I'm guessing as college students and as I was in your place, I had no freaking clue what to do, right? And if I had an idea, like I don't know what's next, what do I do with that idea to actually take it to market, right? So that's going to be the whole whatever 30 minutes about. Some underlying premise to the whole talk. First and foremost, that I have come from building technology companies, so my perspective is going to come from there. Although almost every principle that I talk about applies to companies irrespective of which space it is, but this is where I come from, so this is what I'm going to talk about. And I'm sure many of the people today are getting most influenced by the technology boom. So I'm guessing that's what is going to be most helpful. But all of the principles, take them as principles, can be applied to any kind of business. Now, when I say any kind of business, you should also just take a step back and understand there are fundamentally two types of businesses, right? One is a growth business and one is a lifestyle business. A growth business is what we all read in the newspapers every single day and like on notifications, where all of these companies, from the Zomatos to the Swiggies to all of the big ones, the Baijus, all of these are growth businesses. They are set up to scale, and they're set up to essentially like hold market share, a significant market share. That is one type of business. The other type is called as a lifestyle business, which essentially is to just generate enough cash flow to be able to support the founder's lifestyle. Now, not to say that one cannot be the other, or that one is right and the other is wrong. It doesn't matter. Like all of your mom and pop stores that you have around Bombay, all of these are lifestyle businesses. Essentially, you don't see your Kirana guy like opening like 200 shops, right? He's happy with his, because that supports his lifestyle. Not all lifestyle businesses are that small in size, right? You could have like 10 blogs of your own, and and that helps you support your lifestyle. So there's no wrong decision. You should just know that there are other kinds of business as well, and you can, depending on person to person, you can opt for anything. And of course, the third thing is, there are companies for profit, and then there are those that are not for profit. Now, again, there's no right decision here. It's about where you think you're going to be most valuable, or where you can actually put more of yourself into work. It doesn't matter if you choose something that is not for profit and you just work for a particular cause, or you choose for something that is for profit and you work towards that. Both ways you're going to be providing value. It doesn't matter, but it's just a choice that you have to make, and depending on what choice you make, you go that way. The premise again also entails the fact that you already have an idea in this. There are multiple ways of actually getting an idea. The most the one of the most basic things you need to do is just be aware of things around you. What is happening? What are the current problems that people are facing, businesses are facing, the world is facing, economy is facing, and something that you're passionate about, you go into it. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be unique. Now, we started a matchmaking platform for people with disabilities, and was the world's first of its kind. But we could have just started a shadi.com, right? Called it something else. And in many ways, I think we would have done much better, right? It doesn't have to be unique. Just see if it's a problem that you're passionate about solving. That's it. If it troubles you at night, and you're thinking about it, you're just having sleepless nights thinking about it, then you know that you've got some connection to the problem, and that's the start. There are multiple other ways of getting an idea, but I'm not going to get into that. For me, I'm talking about from you have an idea and now what do you do with it. So the first thing is, of course, what is your idea, right? Or what is the problem that you want to solve? Now, once you have that, you need to essentially ask yourself a few questions, right? Biggest thing, in my opinion, is why. Why does this problem matter to you, right? Why does it matter to you? And there's this principle of asking like 5 whys. So to get to the root of something, you ask yourself why 5 times, right? This is the issue. I want to get into cryptocurrency, for example. Why do you want to get into cryptocurrency? Because it's new and it's upcoming. Why does that matter to you? Why does it matter if it's new? Because there's scope, there's so much, that's where the economy is moving, and this is the value I can provide. I can be an early mover, this, whatever it may be. Just ask yourself why 5 times, and you'll get to the core reason of why actually you want to do that. If you want to do something like in the social space, ask yourself why you want to do that. It's very important to know the core why, because I can't stress enough how much that is going to play a part in the trajectory of your business overall. Because as soon as you start like doing stuff, growing, you kind of start forgetting why you even started in the first place. If you have your why, it's going to be a constant reminder for yourself, for the team, for your customers, users, whoever, as to why you exist, right? And why are you doing what you're doing? And that's really important to know from day one. Second is who you're doing it for. And here, the answer cannot be everyone. A lot of times when I speak to people, they're like, when I ask them who's going to be your like customer, or who's going to be your end user, they share like vague answers like, oh, everyone in Bombay, or like everyone in this, but that can't be your answer. Let me tell you, even for a company like Facebook, if I ask you like who uses Facebook today, it seems like everyone uses Facebook, but when you're inside the company, they have a user's persona as to who is it that is using my app or using my platform. And you have to try and be as specific as possible when you answer this question as to who is it. The other way that I like to think of this is, if you didn't exist, if your business did not exist in the world, who is going to be the most affected? Now, I may be using Facebook, I may be using Instagram and stuff. Personally, if these companies shut tonight, I wouldn't even, it wouldn't matter to me. It would not matter to me one bit. I'd just move on with my life. I'm not their ideal user. It is, it is these others, like, for instance, like creators who create content on Instagram or Facebook, right? There are these people who are addicted, to catching up, to seeing what's happening with friends, family. All of these people, right, are going to be extremely affected if these companies like shut overnight. So the question really to ask is, if your business did not exist, who is going to be the most affected? And when you get to that, and of course, like a company like Facebook today will have 20 different user personas because they are doing so many things. But when you start off, you're trying to solve one problem, and you need to know who is going to be the most affected, or who's going to be the one who's going to most use your product. And the third is how in the sense, how is this going to come together? How am I going to make money? How does this whole thing make money? Or how will this potentially make money? In today's time, you don't need to make money from day one. I'm not going to comment on whether that's a good thing, bad thing. I'm not saying you need to burn money to build your business, but essentially, like, you need to have at least a clear path to how this company or how your product or how your solution actually makes money. And there needs to be something. You cannot be vague about, oh, I'll see what to do about it. You need to be very clear. It may not work out 10 years from now. You may find that, hey, like, I thought I'll make money off this, but like now I'm a completely different path, and that's okay. But you need to know on day one as to what do you think, how this is going to make money. And these three things are important, so important that it can take a long time before you yourself are convinced as to this is what I need to do, because all of this requires a lot of research. Now, a lot of people come, like when I'm talking to them, as soon as I tell them that, hey, like, can you find out about all of these things? 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, like, that's just too much work, and I don't think I'm passionate about the problem anymore. And that's okay. Once you get thinking about all of these things, if the passion still exists, or if it's more than what you originally thought, great. You know that you've got whatever you want to work for. Through this, if you feel like, oh yeah, and screw it, like, I don't think I care enough for this shit. Sorry, pardon my French, but it's not something that I care about, or it's just too small. So be it. It's okay. Move on to the next thing. It's completely okay. But you need to know through research. When I say research, it's not about just Googling this stuff. If you know which industry this is in, go talk to people in the industry. Start with warm contacts, your family, friends, their colleagues, parents, whoever you may know. Start with them. Speak to, when you understand, or when you think you know who your users are, find those guys. Find people like them. And speak to them. See if they actually have the problem that you think that they have. When we started InClub, before we built an app, I had personally called, I'd say about, like, at least about 800 to 1,000 people with disabilities across India, like one after the other, like on my office, then home office landline, to speak to them and ask them if they actually have this problem. Like, what do they do about it today? Not to ask, obvious questions like, hey, will you use my product? Because that's absurd. And there is, you can read up about like what is the best way to do these interviews and everything. But to actually speak to them, understand who these guys are, what do they do, what influences these guys, right? Your end users. What is the biggest issue that they face? What are the other problems that they face around it, right? What are the supporting kind of issues that they face? Speak to industry leaders. You may not, and trust me, you will not have all these guys on your phone book. You'll have to just, they say, they talk about hustle. That's when you'll know what that is, because you just got to grind. Find people, like talk to 10 people, you'll find some link, you find the link, you find somebody else. LinkedIn is like a great way to connect. You can connect to anyone and everyone in the world today. Connect with them. You'll be surprised to know how many people will be open to sharing with you stuff, irrespective of who they are, how big they are, wherever they're working in the world, whatever it may be. So a lot of research goes into this, and you must be like, resilient to go through these things and actually understand what actually ticks for your business, and actually what actually ticks for your users. Yeah. Once you understand the what, the why, how, who, the next thing is to finally put into action, well, like what they call as an MVP, right? Which is to understand, like, how do you validate, okay, now you've spoken to 1,000 people, let's say, and you've spoken to and you've done your research, you've done some surveys, etc., and you know that this is the business model. What is the best way to validate that this truly works? Because when you speak to people versus how they actually behave across a platform can be a little different, and will be a little different, because they may talk to you in a certain way, but when they actually transact with the platform, they may behave a little differently. So how do you actually find out whether this actually works in practice? And here the idea is to find the quickest way to find intent, right? And that's what you're looking for. That's the keyword. It's intent. There was somebody that I was talking to just last week, and they wanted to get into the organic, organic market, right? The organic clothing. And the first thing she told me was that, hey, I'm going to set up I'm going to set up my supply, and I'm going to set up my website, and I'm going to build my social media profile. And that may be naturally that what comes to people's mind when it comes to these things, but that's not the best way to find intent. You need to always ask yourself in the beginning, whatever you do, whatever you think you want to do, you want to set up a social media profile. Is that in any way going to indicate to you intent? And there's no right or wrong answer. It could be yes, right? If it's a blog, for instance, and you set up a profile of yourself on social media, if there are people liking it and following you, that can be intent, right? Because people want to only follow or like things that they're interested in, I assume, and that may be okay, right? But if you're setting up, if you want to do if you want to set up a crypto platform, and then you're setting up social media, you're spending time doing social media, finalizing your logo, registering your company, none of this moves the needle at all, right? It's a waste of time initially. So always ask yourself, is this going to indicate any more to me about the intent of value for the user? If it is, then do it. If it isn't, just chuck it. There's always a better time to do this. It's okay if you don't have a company registered. It takes forever in India to get this stuff done, right? You can do a lot more things in that time. You don't need to have a company. You do not need to know technology to be able to find intent. you can do this in the most rudimentary ways possible. You can set up like surveys on Facebook, on Google, set up lead forms. And these are things, of course, you guys may not know it right now, but it's so easy to learn, right? That's one thing that you have to do is to be able to like always be willing to learn new stuff. And you don't need to actually program or write code. Like Facebook has made it so easy that like children can get onto Facebook and like set up ads. It's just the easiest thing to do. So do it. Learn how to do it. It's super simple. Set up lead forms, set up surveys on Google, even on Instagram, like Facebook. All these have these options. Website, setting up a small website, just to with like a wait list. Set up a small website with like a subscribe kind of section. All of these things are okay to do. And even setting up a website, it's so easy now. You don't need to know the code. You don't have to write one line of code to be able to set up anything. Do these, right? Or if you want, like just go and if it's a non-technology business, right? You may have to like go through some market surveys, try and build like a small prototype and show it to people who may use it. But essentially try and see if you can do anything that will set up more intent, that will indicate more intent to you. And these things are simple. And if you read this book called The Lean Startup, Eric Rice, he talks about these things of how to set up a lean startup. Essentially like just doing things that are the most important. Many times, even now I see, like, including for myself, a lot of times we just get distracted in like so many things. We're not really doing things that move the needle. And if you are starting up from scratch and you're assuming you're the only person, or just two of you or three of you, you need to be like brutally focused. So just trash everything that is a vanity, right? Screw it. Just look at things that actually matter. And once let's say you set up like a lead form, let's say you set up like a website with a wait list, right? And you have a decent amount of interest. And this again is very subjective, depending on what you're actually setting up, which country you're setting it up in, what domain it is in, what is the actual market size for it, and what is the need for something like this. It can matter. It can change. But what you can do and what you have in your control is to find not 1 million people, not even like 10,000 people. Just find 1,000 people, right? Just find 1,000 people that who, as they call it, as our true fans. These are the 1,000 people who, if your product launches, right? If your platform launches or your product launches, you can bet your life that these 1,000 people will subscribe to it on day one. Because these are, going back to what I said, these are those guys who will be most affected if you don't exist. And you need to know them. You need to know them inside out. You can have them like on your WhatsApp for all I care, right? You must be in contact with these guys, because these 1,000 people is only a representation of your market, right? This can be 1 million, this can be multi-million, this could be $1 billion market, right? But this 1,000 is only a representation of it. Every single thing that you do it for these 1,000 people. You do it for these 1,000 people, you get feedback from them. You'll see like how building for these 1,000, you're pretty much building for the entire market. Of course, like, later in your growth story, you will have different product lines, you'll have different user personas. So you'll need to apply the same kind of principle at scale. And that could be the principle is the same, but the way you do it is a little different. But essentially, if you're starting up if you have one idea and you're trying to look for one product market fit, are you able to get 1,000 people to subscribe to it? And that's the question. And you need to have them. At InClub, I kid you not, I had like the first 2,000 people that came onto InClub, our app, I knew them like personally. And it kind of got a little overwhelming because after a point, like I'm getting messages saying that, oh, I've met somebody, or I'm dating someone, I'm getting married, hey, here's my card, but this is great, right? I would much rather have this problem than not have like a clue who my users are, where they're from, what do they do, what they like, etc. These are the guys who, even today, I'll tell you a story from just 3 days ago. And I used to not have like a different business number and personal number and stuff. I just had one number. I've had one number all my life. Just 3 or 4 days ago, like I get a message on WhatsApp, some random like text saying, hey, how are you? Good morning, whatever. And I see this person's image and I don't recognize him. And I'm like, who? Like, hey, I'm good, but who is this? Like, who is this? And he says, oh, I'm like Thomas or something. And I'm like, how do I know you? And he sends me an image of an article of InClubs that came in his newspaper. And he's taken a cutting of it and he's kept it somewhere in his house, because we used to do these meetups. So we were in Chennai, I think maybe in 2017 or 18. I think Times of India or somebody had published about this. So he had taken a cutting of this and he had kept it somewhere, and he had taken a photo to just show me that this is how I know you. And I was like, wow, like if you can find people like that who like years later who still have like some piece of your story in them somewhere, like I don't know where he's kept it, but he took a picture and knew that it's somewhere in either a book or like on a wall or something, where basically even today, I know that if I was to go and start up and do something in this space, I knew that Thomas will subscribe on day one. He wouldn't like even think twice before doing it. So find like 1,000 people like Thomas, and you build for 1,000, you're pretty much building for 1,000,000. Initially, you will realize that like everything that you're doing, you're pretty much manually involved in every single thing, right? Like right from talking to people on the phone, right? You'll spend like hours and hours just talking to people on the phone, writing emails, responding to emails, setting up like Google Sheets or whatever. You will realize at some point, hopefully, that you're doing things that can't be scaled. You can't be like actually talking to these guys like forever, right? You can't be actually like just sitting and reaching out to people, responding to people forever. But initially, just remember that you must do things that actually don't scale at all. You must be that chief everything officer who's talking to a user in the morning, talking to your landlord in the afternoon, talking to talking to your doing your own accounts in the evening. It's basically doing everything, because you will need to be the owner of end to end of like how this whole thing works. Because when you think about a business, it just looks fancy, but when you actually get into the thick of things, you realize that there are just so many small nuances to it, and you need to be aware of all of the nuances, because going forward, when you set up teams, no one can take you for a ride, right? Because you know this work and you've done it before, right? And B, when there's an issue at any point in your life when you're leading a team, they all look up to you, and you can't say, I have no idea because I've never done this. And I'm talking about maybe the first few years of the company. Of course, when this grows into like, a much larger team with 50, 100 people, 200 people, you can't possibly know everything. But initially, you need to know the nuances from the start to the end of your own business, because you'll know exactly where to optimize and where to essentially just shave off. You will make that decision. You can't be just knowing one thing and not knowing anything about the other. You don't have to be great with everything. I did 3 years of accounting and finance, and I must say that I realized that I'm just terrible at it. So from then on, like, I just don't do accounts, finance. I'm horrible at it. But did I not? But I did it initially. I did manage some bit of the finance initially, and then when we had a bigger team, I kind of put that away. But I know what goes into it. I know the fundamental principles of how this stuff works, and that's all I need to know. So you don't have to be good with everything, but you need to know what goes around and how this whole thing is going to shape up. It's very important that you do things that don't scale, because that's when you'll truly learn. When you do scale, you'll know where to put time, put energy, put investment. If you come in and you have like a team to do it, you have pretty much no idea. You don't have any like problem solving skill at all, because you're just, you've always been cocooned in one thing, and now you have the whole business to handle. You can't do it. There's also an article that you must read. It's called Do Things That Don't Scale. I'm forgetting his name, by the Y Combinator founder, but please read it. It's amazing. It's amazing. You must read it, see his perspective on this. And of course, he explains it much, much better than I do. So, right. So you've come from an idea. You know what is the way to find out how to validate it. You understand who your users are. You've got your 1,000 true fans. You're pretty much now at a point where you're working 20 hours a day, and you're doing all of these things simultaneously. And maybe after listening to this, you've like said, okay, I don't want a team. I want to do things, that don't scale. I want to still do it on like Google Sheets, and I want to do it on Excel because Shankar said so. That's okay. The next thing essentially is, once you have all of these pieces together, what's next? And the next thing here is to think about, okay, how can I take this from 1,000 people? How can I provide value from going from 1,000 people to 1,000,000 people, or maybe 10,000 people to 100,000 people, or to 1,000,000 people? How can I do that? Right? That's when you know that, okay, like now I need a team, because I can't be working 20 hours every day, 25 hours, 20 something hours every day. I need someone to be taking some of these things up. Not so that you can work 4 hours. It's so that when you put in 20, you'll still put in 20 hours. But when you put in 20 hours, you're putting in 20 hours into maybe 1 or 2 things, rather than putting 20 hours into 7 things, right? Because now you have someone else putting 20 hours into those 1 or 2 things. That's when you need a team. You may need a co-founder, right? Many of you, I'm guessing, don't have a technology background, don't know how to code. I was one of them. I still am. And that's okay. You don't need to know how to code to set up a technology company. You can, when the need arises, you can find the right people. Whether to make them co-founder, whether to make them employee. That's a whole different ball game. And I don't have enough time to talk about all of those things, but essentially you need a team, right? You can have a co-founder, you can have teams that handle your marketing, your technology, customer support, everything. So one is that. So you divide your time among your team. Second is funding, right? Something that we hear all the damn time today. Essentially think of this as just like how you're bifurcating so that you can grow in terms of time. With funding, you can grow just in terms of speed. Instead of doing what you're doing to grow, like, let's say 1x to 5x in 1 year, with funding, with that infusion of money, you could probably do it in 30 days. And that's the only reason you should take funding, is because you want speed, not because like you want an article in your story, not because of that, right? It's only because you want to speeden up the value that you get to your end user. That user should not wait 1 year because you don't have enough money. He should be able to get it in 30 days because you have the money. And that's all the reason for funding should be. And of course, third is to scale. Now you have a team, you have the money. Now the next thing is actually seeing how to take this, whether you can replicate what you did for 1,000 people on your own, to do that for 10,000 or 100,000 or 1 million people with a bigger team and with more money. Can you do that same thing faster, better, and deliver quicker value than anyone else? Here, of course, it's about, I'm talking about from an idea to an MVP. These are just the highlights of these are just like huge conversations, right? Each of these things, each of these aspects essentially I can go on for days about, but in 30, 40 minutes, I'm only touching upon some of these things. So when you look at this, or when you look at this, or when you hear me, or anything that you read on YouTube, or like you read on website, or you watch on YouTube, or whatever, you can only learn about some of the core principles. But when you do it on your own is when you'll figure your own way. You just need to have that humility to understand that you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. There are people who are out there who have done the same thing. So just follow some of the principles, but you will figure that your journey is very different from anyone else's. Some of the tenets that, back now, when I think about some of these things, if I was to start up again, which may very soon happen, but if I was to start up again, or if I was to tell you guys, like, what are just some tenets that you should follow, or that I follow. I don't know if you want to, but these are just some of the things that I would hope that you keep in mind before starting up or building anything of your own, really. First is purely because of how just the influence of social media today on everyone. There are just superstars. There are just superstar companies, and then there are just superstar products out there with superstar valuations and everything. But just keep in mind that from day one to maybe you can be a $1 billion company, you can be a unicorn, decacorn, I don't know, trecacorn maybe in the near future. But always know that you need to chase value, not valuation, because it's very easy to get like distracted by this whole valuation game. Next time when you guys walk around or whatever, like when you see an expensive car, an expensive house or watch or whatever, I don't know, whatever you guys see, expensive phone, don't think, how can I get that much money? Just always change that question to, what is the value that this person is bringing to the world? If there is somebody who's earned, who's earned a good living, always ask yourself, like, what is the value that they have brought? And you will see that, in most cases, that it's justified. It's justified the money that they have. If you see, for instance, if I was to take Bollywood, right? Why are these guys getting paid so much? Because they pretty much influence you and I on a daily basis, right? If someone has that much power to influence your choices, your decisions, your moods, you go into a theater and you're crying for like 20 minutes, you're laughing for the next 40 minutes, you're doing all these things. That's a lot of power in the hands of very few people. And it's not just power, right? It's not in the negative sense. I'm saying that's the value that they provide to humanity at large. So always ask yourself, like, what is the value that you can provide? Valuations and the money and everything, honestly, will come in automatically in the right place. Even today, if you look at a company like Zomato, Byju's, whoever, just forget about the fact that they're valued at like $10-15 billion companies. Now Paytm is listed in the markets. Just to ask, like, what is the value? What is the value? Not how much money they've made or how much money he has raised or this or that. What is the value? What are they doing? And just that shift in mindset will help you like focus on the right things, not get distracted by things like valuations and money and all of that stuff. Persistence, super important. As an entrepreneur, I can tell you that the odds are against you at every moment, all the time. It's always against you. There needs to be something, and I go back to the question of the why, right? If you know why you started this, and you know why you want to do this, and why this gave you sleepless nights, next morning when you wake up, you're going to go, okay, one more day, right? I'm going to push this one more day. I'm going to push this one more day. And that persistence, I can't tell you how important it is. And you need to have it. If you don't have the why, right, after a point when all doors close and you feel like you're against a wall, you won't even know why do you need to wake up next morning and do this again. You wouldn't even know. You wouldn't know where it all came from. You need to have like sheer persistence, and this trumps anything else, right? You have to be bold. You have to, like I said, we got some really ridiculously like unreachable, unapproachable people to respond to us on Twitter, on email. And these are people who are like halfway across the country. When we wrote to them and we reached out, we are not thinking, they're going to, have all the time to respond. But they did, right? But if you would have thought, hey, like, how can I write to Jeff Bezos? Like, that's insane. And you just give up. Well, like, you'll never know. You'll never know if he does respond. And I must tell you that, like, Jeff responds to, at least he's known to respond to every email within the company. So and he reads every single email. So you never know. And there are people like him everywhere. And you just need to have that courage to say, okay, what's the worst? I'm going to write to this guy. I'm going to write to this guy. I'm going to write to this guy. I'm going to reach out to this guy. I'm going to do this. You have to be persistent all the time, because at whatever stage you are, things are going to be against you. Another thing, you are never going to have the right answers, ever. You're never going to have enough information, ever. You just have to be comfortable in this. It took me a long time, because I'm a very I want to be like certain about certain things, right? I can't just operate in uncertainty. But it took me a while, but you have to get comfortable with just like never-ending uncertainties. Your aim should be to see how, not like how to be always right, but how can you just potentially minimize all the mistakes that you could possibly make. That's all, because you can never do anything more than that. And you have to be you have to get comfortable in uncertainty. And this will come over time. But when you realize that shit, like stuff is, I just don't have answers to many of these things, you can tend to say, okay, like maybe this is not for me. You can question, you can start questioning your self-belief. Just know that that's where everyone operates at their best, right? You need to learn to operate and find comfort in that gray area all the time. Yeah. So perfection is the enemy of progress. You may have heard of this also, but this is so true in startups, where you have like an idea of the perfect, for example, perfect feature or perfect application or the perfect like logo or this or that. You forget that like in that chase of perfection, you are going nowhere. You're not pushing the needle at all. You need to always know that you're never, ever going to hit perfection. If I give you something that you think is perfect, next morning you're going to wake up and say, I want this a little better. I want this a little different. So don't ever chase perfection. You can rarely ever be perfect. You can never technically be perfect at anything, because you can't make everybody happy, right? Even if you think something is perfect, and this has happened to us a lot. We spend like 3 months on a feature because we feel like this is the experience it needs to have. User needs to come in. This is what he needs to see. This is what he needs to go in. And we spend so much time finalizing just like the smallest of nuances. 3 months later, we realize when we ship it out, we're like, nobody even cares. No one cares for that feature. And like you could have, in that 3 months, you could have saved that 3 months, figured out that no one cares for it, and actually build something else, just improve on it to make sure that actually is getting used. So don't worry about perfection. Like companies like Google, even today, they are not like the most perfect companies, right? When they roll out something, it's not the most perfect. It's buggy. Even now, like it'll have crashes, it'll be buggy and everything. It's okay. I'm not saying that just do something, like just half-ass something, but don't do that. But forget about the, meeting your idea of perfection, because it's only your idea. Remember that it's not, no one else will think it's perfect. So remember that progress is the key, not perfection. And last and the most important is patience, because today people can really get like bogged by the just by the sheer like news of things of people, of companies growing. And you'll see like you'll only hear about companies which have gone from 0 to 100 in like 18 months, a startup to like buyout of 300 million in like 20 months, 0 to like $1 billion valuation in 5 years, 6 years. The thing is that that's the job of media, right? They need to, if they can't sensationalize something, they have to find something that's sensational to put out there. And what happens that kind of screws with our head, because the minute you're in like year 1, year 2, year 3, and you're like, man, like I'm not going anywhere. Like this other company in 3 years, they raised like 500 million. You just know that there are 99% of all companies are in like don't have such sensational stories where they go from 0 to 100 in no time. But we only hear about those that do. And that's, there's a problem there, because you'll start losing patience. You'll realize, man, like this is not working out. It's been 3 years since I'm at this, right? But 3 years is nothing. It's nothing. people put like, this generation is still really bad. Like, I mean, the previous generation, they spent like 15 years, 20 years building something out, 20, 25 years working in the same place. There isn't that inherent FOMO as such, where you're just like, oh, this is not working fast enough, right? Don't aspire to be like 20 something billionaires, because if you're again, like, if you're chasing the money, you will be impatient. If you're chasing value, and if you're impatient about value, that's great, because you're in the right place. Because then you're not impatient about time. You're just worried about how can I get more value to people. But you can kind of get a little, if you don't have the patience, you just need to know that, like, there's, all the news is great, and maybe you will get there someday. If at all you do, that's okay. But you've got to be patient. Most things take time. It takes time to, sometimes, like, it takes for an overnight success. They say it takes 20 years for an overnight success. That's what happens. Sometimes you don't know if you're doing, something. It may tick for you after like 8 years, 9 years. But when it ticks, you're skyrocketing. But until then, maybe you're just figuring it out. So it's okay. Not everybody has like a hockey stick growth. You can have a linear growth. That's fine. And you just got to be okay with it and not get carried away by the news articles and funding news stories and everything. Yeah, I mean, these are things that I think you should keep in mind, and that is just my time. This is my, I mean, if you guys care, I'm only on LinkedIn. I'm on these other platforms, but I'm on LinkedIn a lot more. I value this platform a lot more, and that's my, what do you call it? Not handle, right? That's just, you find me with that, like, on LinkedIn, I guess. That's it from me. Like, I would love to open it up. I don't know how much time we have. I thought I'd keep it short, but it's already been like 45 minutes, I think, since I started. So over to you guys. I'm happy to hear anything, comments, questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful session. I personally loved your experiences, and I'm sure someday we might also, just send you a screenshot of this meeting and remind you, oh, we saw you here, just like Thomas did. So yeah, we open the platform for all questions in case the audience has any questions here or on YouTube channel. Just to remind you, sir, we have a huge audience watching you on YouTube live as well. So if we might find any questions there or any feedbacks. Okay, so we have. Sir, do you want me to read out for you, or would you like to go through it personally? The questions.
Okay, I'm just going to stop my screen share. Okay, firstly, and I told this to Shant, just don't call me sir. I'm not that much older to you guys or anything. Just call me Shankar, please. How is one to do all things while studying to make someone better than others? To work with them. So you're right. So here's the dichotomy, right? You need to be, when you start up, I'm assuming that when you start up, you're bootstrapped, right? You're putting your own money, time, whatever. You're not, you don't have funding itself already. But when you start on your own, you're strapped on all of these things. If you may put like some amount of money of your own to just for the basic things. Initially, if you do all of things that entail your business end to end, and I told you, right, like, you will, once you try and understand what actually moves the needle, you're going to not spend time doing too many other things. So all of the things that you actually focus on initially will be things that help you find intent, and you'll realize that you're not spending, it's actually not Not like you're going to be spending hours and hours on accounting or hours on, on something, on some support tickets or anything. You'll be doing things like talking to your customers, your users. You'll be doing things like talking to probably like industry leaders. You'll be doing things like connecting with people, like-minded people, because tomorrow, you need to kind of bring a team together, etc. At some point, you'll realize that you're burning out doing all of these things. And out of all of these things, there are certain things which you cannot let go of. And there are certain things where you can. And if you have the bandwidth to bring someone on, it could be an intern for all you care, right? If you have the bandwidth to manage that person or pay him or her, it's okay to delegate it. All I'm trying to say is that don't get into this mindset that I'm going to be CEO, so I'm just going to talk to the press, and I don't care. I'm just going to get like 10 other people just to do stuff. Because when you do that, and it may sound funny, but a lot of people do this. You like tomorrow, if all of these 10 guys leave, do you know how to hold your idea together? How to hold this whole ship together? You may not know how to do it. You may not be able to do it because it's grown to a point where you can't possibly do it on your own, but you know how to do it. And tomorrow you will, when you hire a team, you can be pretty clear with them as to what is needed to be done. Because initially you're not going to get like 15, 20-year-old experienced guys who already know what they need to do for them to come in and just do their stuff. You're going to have to deal with interns, people with 1-2 years of experience. And they're still like young, they don't know, right? They're looking to you to tell them what needs to be done or where their mistakes are and things like that. If they're smart, lesser things will come to you, but there will still be things that will come to you. You just need to be able to know how to be able to be clear with them. And if you haven't done some parts of everything, there's no way you can be clear with them. You can't just say, okay, just go handle marketing. What does that mean? Like, what do you want me to do? You want me to like post on Facebook? You want me to respond on Instagram? You want me to set up a Snapchat account? What do you want me to do? Right? So if you know what has worked, you have done some of these things, you'll know exactly like, okay, I need you to focus on this, right? And in this, don't get distracted. I need you to only do this, right? Because this is where the value is. So you make sure that as your KPI, right, which is what's called as a key performance indicator, this is what you need to do. And that's what I mean by that. If you can't go in with the mindset that I'm CEO, I'm just the boss, like I'm going to have like people around me, I'm going to talk to press, well, you're in a mess very soon. I hope that answered, Ashna, your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Again, sir.
So we have another, I'm sorry I said so. We have another question in the chat box. How can one enter a market where there are few market leaders already? Example, drinking water, aerated drinks market, etc. I'm sorry.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Does it make sense to consider such markets to enter? Well, Sean, back in 2010, 2011, the biggest like cab operator was Meru Cabs, if you remember. But like they was just, well, like no one figured that there's any need for any disruption there. But there was a problem, right? There was an issue of convenience with Meru Cabs. And those were the only like that and cool cabs. These were the only two things, right? It's not at your convenience. It's not, well, it's expensive. It's not at your convenience. And there isn't that much supply. So there was an issue. You'll tend to see that if there are leaders for like industry leaders for many, many years, because there isn't competition, as a company, they just get complacent, right? Like if Uber didn't come into the market, we'd still be relying on Meru cabs and Cool cabs to get like from one place to another. But they'll just get complacent. Like, so you'd never think that Meru, like Uber would come and just disrupt. Today, like who uses Meru cabs? No one. I don't know a single person that does. Even though at one point they were industry leaders. So if you're asking like, does it make sense? Yes, if you see that there's a clear value proposition, then yes, it does. It does make sense. I mean, we see so many examples of this, right? Today, Ola is getting into like manufacturing automobiles. Are there any dearth of automobile manufacturers in this country? I mean, who are there top notch, who have been there for like years now, like decades? 5 generations of them are just freaking manufacturing automobiles, right? But Ola is like, okay, you know what, like I'm going to start manufacturing automobiles because there is like right now, because of gasoline prices going up and everything, Ola's like, hey, like I'm going to get into EV, right? Electric vehicles, and I'm going to make sure that I'm the best at it. That's it. Now, if a Hero Honda or the Tatas, they have to get it, they have to also like start investing into this whole thing. But it doesn't mean that you cannot get into it. It's just, if there's a value proposition, go for it. And you will see also that if there are 1,000 people that drink, because you said aerated drinks, if there are 1,000 people that drink like Coca-Cola, right? For some, and Coca-Cola now is like an iPhone, right? They don't tell you what are the benefits of drinking Coca-Cola or the benefits of having an iPhone, right? It's just a brand. It's just something that you're used to. It's just a taste that you acquire and you're there. It takes a long time to build something like a Coca-Cola or an Apple, right? But if there is something that you know that there's a gap, and all those users, those 1,000 Coca-Cola users tomorrow will consider your drink for whatever reason, go for it. Who knows, like tomorrow Coca-Cola may just acquire you, right? Because they don't want to build this stuff from scratch, like they did with like Thumbs Up and all these other things. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely makes sense.
Okay, how to choose the right members when you're hiring? Oh, touchy question. There's no right answer, my friend. You'll just figure it out. Well, I'd say at least get people that align with your principles, because skill and their learning and everything, you're never going to know, really. You just have to figure it out. A lot of it depends on you because of what the relationship you build with them in the team. Are you able to bring the best out of them? But there's no real right answers. Just, try and initially, of course, like one thing I'll tell you, for the early members, you need to be able to find somebody that you can get along with. You'll be spending way too much time with them, right? Mornings, evenings, nights, everything. So make sure you get along well with them. It can't be, if you think that you can, like, yeah, this is the guy I can go and like have a drink with in the evening. That's one of the things, right? That's, in fact, maybe one of the most important things, that you need to be able to chill with this person. If you can't stand this person off hours, there's no way this relationship won't work. And see that they're like, whatever, aligning with your principles, whatever those may be. For me, it was always like, I would always see if this person shows some signs of ethics, is a little disciplined, right? Punctuality for me is one of the most important things. Yeah, just these initially, and then you'll figure it out. But there's no right answer. You will mess up in your hiring. You'll think this is the perfect guy. 3 months later, you're just like, man, like So I can't get anything out of him, right? And he's just kind of not the right fit. Well, you've learned. Next time your intuition will tell you better.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that's it that we had for the questions. And I would like to thank you for, sparing itna sara time for us for the entire meet. Like, we're really, really appreciating you for being here, sharing your experiences, and obviously the entire audience that we have here for maintaining the meeting at its full capacity, and the huge audience that we have on YouTube as well. Thank you for staying throughout. I thank you, Shankar sir, again for your valuable insights. And I'm sorry if I kept saying sir to you, but yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. And I'd like to thank, of course, Sean, right? And of course, Ashok Wadia sir and Rakhi ma'am and everybody who's involved. It's not easy to set something up like this over, like over Zoom, where most people are kind of tuned out. But I guess like everyone's adapting and you're doing your best. So, all the best and congratulations. I'm just going to leave like one link here. This is the LinkedIn link. So in case anyone wants to connect, talk, or whatever, like just ask me anything, like I'm more than happy to. Yeah, all the best, you guys, and hopefully you will come out with flying colors.
Thank you, Shankar. That was really nice and lovely presentation. I mean, the presentation has less of content and more of thoughts. That was one of the best thing. With that, every word on the presentation had a lot of meaning behind that. In fact, your 5 why analysis and all that. So thank you very much. I just wanted to ask, Shankar, you're based in Mumbai?
Currently, yes.
Okay, fine. I'll drop in an email to you by tomorrow morning. And yeah, so regarding what the principal said. Huh?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
All right.
And
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you have sent the feedback link.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
We can stop recording.
Should I stop the recording?
Yeah. Everyone,
Live too.
no, don't stop the live.
Acha, okay.
Yeah. Everyone, please fill in the feedback form. The link won't be circulated afterwards, so you can only fill the feedback form right now. You won't be able to fill it later. So make sure you all fill it right away.
Including committee members. By when you want to end it on YouTube live?
Ma'am, just 2 minutes. We'll end it after that.
Okay.
If we stop the live, the form will get all the messages will leave. So we leave the live on for 5-7 minutes.
So tomorrow is at 3, right?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Take it. Okay, I'm leaving. Shut it in timer. The feedback form also.
Yes.
Whosoever has filled the form can leave the meeting. I'll see you tomorrow.